The Torrino crime family's plan to take control of the Golden Palace Casino was systematic. Intimidate the staff, compromise security, and turn the gambling floor into their personal ATM. But the head of casino security wasn't intimidated by organized crime threats. He was a former FBI agent whose 8 years infiltrating crime families had taught him to recognize and neutralize criminal organizations before they could establish control. For 5 years, Vincent Romano had been the invisible protector of the Golden Palace Casino. As head of security for one of Las Vegas's most prestigious gaming establishments, he oversaw a complex operation that included surveillance, floor security, and the protection of millions of dollars that flowed through the casino every day. To the staff and patrons, he was simply Vince, the professional security director who somehow made the chaos of a 24/7 casino look effortlessly controlled. What they didn't know was that Vincent carried credentials that would have shocked the entire gaming industry. Hidden in his secure apartment was an FBI service record documenting 8 years as an undercover agent specializing in organized crime infiltration. The same eyes that now monitored gambling tables and surveillance screens had once gathered evidence against some of the most dangerous crime families in America, where one mistake could mean torture and death. Those 8 years had taken Vincent deep into the criminal underworld. FBI undercover agents were specialists in long-term infiltration, criminal psychology, and the patient work of building cases that could dismantle entire criminal organizations. Vincent had spent months living as a criminal, earning the trust of crime family members, and gathering evidence that had led to dozens of convictions and the destruction of criminal enterprises worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The transition from FBI undercover work to casino security hadn't been as different as most people would expect. Both jobs required the ability to read people, identify threats, and recognize when criminal activity was taking place. The main difference was that as an FBI agent, Vincent had been working to build cases against criminals, while as casino security, his job was to prevent criminal activity before it could occur. The Golden Palace Casino was a tempting target for organized crime. Located in the heart of Las Vegas, it processed over $200 million annually through its gaming operations, restaurants, and entertainment venues. The high cash volume, multiple entry points, and complex operations created numerous opportunities for criminal exploitation if security wasn't vigilant. Vincent had noticed patterns that concerned him. Over the past month, he'd observed individuals who matched profiles from his FBI training, people whose behavior suggested they were conducting systematic reconnaissance of the casino's operations. They weren't typical gamblers or tourists. They were professionals whose interest in the casino appeared to be more strategic than recreational. Tonight felt different. Tonight, Vincent's instincts were telling him that the surveillance phase was over, and something more direct was about to happen. His FBI training had taught him that organized crime operations typically followed predictable patterns: reconnaissance, planning, infiltration, and finally, execution. All the indicators suggested that the Golden Palace was moving from the reconnaissance phase to active criminal infiltration. The first sign of trouble came at 7:30 p.m. when Vincent noticed Tony Torrino Jr. enter the casino with 2 associates. Vincent recognized Tony immediately from FBI surveillance photos. He was a captain in the Torrino crime family, a criminal organization that the Bureau had been investigating for over a decade. Tony's presence at the Golden Palace wasn't casual. It represented a direct threat to the casino's operations. Vincent began implementing what the FBI called counter-surveillance, observing the criminal organization without alerting them to his scrutiny. Using the casino's extensive camera system, Vincent tracked Tony and his associates as they moved through the gaming floor, apparently familiarizing themselves with the layout, security procedures, and cash handling operations. At 8:15 p.m., Vincent observed the second phase of what appeared to be a coordinated infiltration. Maria Torrino, Tony's sister and the family's money laundering specialist, arrived with a team of well-dressed individuals who began playing high-stakes games at tables throughout the casino. Their play patterns suggested they weren't gambling for entertainment. They were testing the casino's cash handling procedures and identifying security vulnerabilities. Vincent activated his secure communication system and began documenting the criminal activity using techniques he'd learned during FBI operations. Each member of the Torrino organization was photographed, their activities were logged, and their behavioral patterns were analyzed using criminal profiling methods that had been developed specifically for organized crime investigations. By 9:30 p.m., Vincent had identified 8 members of the Torrino organization operating throughout the casino. Their coordinated presence wasn't coincidental. It represented the beginning of what organized crime investigators called territorial establishment, the process by which crime families took control of legitimate businesses for criminal purposes. Vincent knew from his FBI experience that organized crime takeovers typically followed a standard pattern. First, they would establish a presence and test security responses. Then they would begin intimidating key personnel to ensure cooperation. Finally, they would implement their criminal operations, money laundering, loan sharking, and skimming, while using threats and violence to maintain control. The Golden Palace was about to become a crime family asset unless Vincent could prevent it. But Vincent faced a dilemma that his FBI training had prepared him for. He was no longer a federal agent with arrest authority, and he couldn't simply call for backup from the Bureau. Instead, he had to find a way to protect the casino using his knowledge of organized crime operations while maintaining his cover as a legitimate security director. Vincent began implementing what the FBI called defensive counterintelligence, using his knowledge of criminal operations to disrupt their plans without revealing his law enforcement background. At 10:45 p.m., the Torrino organization began the intimidation phase of their takeover operation. Vincent watched through surveillance cameras as Tony Torrino approached Sarah Chen, the casino's floor manager, and began what appeared to be a friendly conversation about casino operations. But Vincent's FBI training allowed him to read the body language and recognize the subtle threats that were being communicated. Vincent moved quickly to Sarah's location, using crowd navigation techniques he'd learned during undercover operations. His goal was to interrupt the intimidation without creating a confrontation that could escalate into violence. "Sarah," Vincent said, approaching with the calm authority he'd developed during FBI operations, "we need you in the security office to review some surveillance footage." Tony Torrino looked at Vincent with the calculating expression of someone who was used to having his conversations interrupted only by people who didn't understand the consequences. "We were just talking about casino operations," Tony said, his tone carrying an implicit threat. "I'm sure you were," Vincent replied, maintaining the professional demeanor that had served him well during undercover work. "Sarah, let's go review that footage now." As Sarah walked away with Vincent, Tony's expression indicated that he recognized he was dealing with someone who wasn't easily intimidated. Vincent had just sent a message that the Golden Palace's security wasn't going to cooperate with organized crime infiltration. But Vincent knew that his intervention had also escalated the situation. The Torrino organization would now view casino security as an obstacle that needed to be eliminated or compromised. Vincent's FBI experience had taught him that organized crime responded to resistance with increased pressure and, eventually, violence. Over the next 2 hours, Vincent observed the crime family's response to his intervention. Additional Torrino associates began arriving at the casino, and their behavior became more aggressive. They weren't trying to blend in anymore. They were making their presence known as a form of psychological warfare designed to convince casino staff that resistance was futile. At 12:30 a.m., Vincent intercepted communications between Torrino family members using surveillance equipment that was more sophisticated than typical casino security systems. The conversations revealed that the crime family was planning to make Vincent an offer he couldn't refuse: join their operation or face the consequences of opposition. Vincent realized he was facing the same situation he'd encountered during undercover FBI operations. Organized crime was trying to corrupt or eliminate him, and he had to respond without revealing his law enforcement background or compromising his position at the casino. His FBI training had prepared him for exactly this scenario. At 1:15 a.m., Tony Torrino requested a private meeting with Vincent in the casino's executive conference room. Vincent knew this was the moment when the crime family would make their offer: join their operation or face escalating threats. His FBI experience had taught him that these conversations were crucial points where criminal organizations either gained control or faced determined resistance. Vincent entered the meeting with the confidence he'd developed during 8 years of dealing with dangerous criminals. Tony Torrino was accompanied by 2 associates who were clearly there for intimidation purposes, but Vincent had faced worse threats during his undercover career. "Mr. Romano," Tony began, using the respectful tone that organized crime employed when they were still hoping for cooperation, "my family has some business interests that could benefit the Golden Palace. We're looking for security professionals who understand how things work." Vincent recognized the offer immediately. The Torrino family was proposing a partnership where Vincent would look the other way while they used the casino for money laundering and other criminal activities. In exchange, he would receive payments and protection from the crime family. "I appreciate the offer," Vincent replied, using the calm, non-committal tone he'd perfected during FBI operations, "but I'm happy with my current position." Tony's expression hardened. "Mr. Romano, I don't think you understand the benefits of working with my family, or the problems that can arise when people don't appreciate our friendship." Vincent had heard these same threats during dozens of FBI investigations. The pattern was always the same: first the offer, then the implied threat, and finally the escalation to actual violence if cooperation wasn't secured. "I understand perfectly," Vincent said, maintaining eye contact with Tony in a way that conveyed neither fear nor aggression. "And I'm telling you that the Golden Palace operates within the law." The meeting ended with Tony making it clear that Vincent's refusal to cooperate would have consequences. But Vincent had sent an equally clear message that casino security wouldn't be intimidated into submission. As the Torrino associates left the conference room, Vincent began implementing the defensive strategy he'd learned during FBI training. His goal was to protect the casino and its employees while gathering evidence that could be used to prosecute the crime family for their attempted takeover. Vincent activated recording equipment that was hidden throughout the casino and began documenting every interaction between Torrino family members and casino staff. His FBI experience had taught him that organized crime prosecutions required extensive evidence, and Vincent was determined to build a case that would eliminate the threat to the Golden Palace. Over the following week, Vincent conducted what was essentially a one-man FBI investigation while maintaining his cover as casino security director. Using surveillance techniques he'd learned during undercover operations, Vincent documented the Torrino family's systematic attempt to take control of the Golden Palace's operations. The evidence Vincent gathered revealed a sophisticated criminal enterprise. The Torrino organization was planning to use the casino for money laundering operations worth millions of dollars monthly. They intended to compromise key personnel through bribes and threats, install their own people in critical positions, and use the casino's high cash volume to clean drug money and other criminal proceeds. Vincent's investigation also revealed that the Golden Palace wasn't the Torrino family's only target. They were simultaneously working to gain control of 3 other Las Vegas casinos, with the goal of creating a criminal network that could launder hundreds of millions of dollars annually, while generating additional revenue through loan sharking and illegal gambling operations. The scope of the criminal enterprise convinced Vincent that he needed to contact his former colleagues at the FBI. While he was no longer a federal agent, his evidence could be crucial for a Bureau investigation that could dismantle the entire Torrino criminal organization. Vincent arranged a meeting with Special Agent Lisa Rodriguez, his former FBI partner, who was now leading the Bureau's Organized Crime Task Force. The meeting took place in a secure location away from the casino, and Vincent presented evidence that documented the Torrino family's criminal activities with the precision of someone who had been trained in federal law enforcement procedures. "Vincent, this is exactly what we need to build a RICO case against the entire Torrino organization," Agent Rodriguez said, reviewing the surveillance footage and recorded conversations that Vincent had gathered. "Your evidence shows a clear pattern of criminal enterprise and conspiracy that could put the entire crime family in prison." But Agent Rodriguez also warned Vincent that his investigation had put him in extreme danger. "The Torrino family knows you're not cooperating with their takeover," she explained. "That makes you a direct threat to their criminal operations, and they've killed people for less." Vincent understood the risk, but his FBI training had also taught him that organized crime could only be defeated by people who were willing to stand up to their intimidation and violence. He had a choice: continue fighting the Torrino family's takeover or abandon the Golden Palace to criminal control. The decision took him less than 5 seconds. Vincent had spent 8 years infiltrating organized crime to protect innocent people from criminal exploitation. He wasn't going to stop now. The FBI operation that followed was one of the largest organized crime investigations in Las Vegas history. Using Vincent's evidence as the foundation, federal agents launched a comprehensive investigation into the Torrino family's criminal activities that extended far beyond their attempted casino takeover. The investigation revealed that the Golden Palace was just one component of a criminal enterprise that included drug trafficking, money laundering, illegal gambling, and loan sharking operations worth over $500 million annually. Vincent's surveillance had provided the key evidence needed to prove the criminal conspiracy and obtain warrants for arrests and asset seizures. When the FBI arrested 23 members of the Torrino organization 6 months later, Vincent's undercover work as casino security director was credited with preventing what could have become one of the largest money laundering operations in Nevada history. His evidence was crucial for securing convictions that resulted in lengthy federal prison sentences for the crime family's leadership. The Golden Palace Casino, recognizing that Vincent had saved their business from criminal takeover, offered him a significant promotion and salary increase. But perhaps more importantly, the casino industry began implementing new security protocols based on Vincent's experience detecting and countering organized crime infiltration. Vincent's story spread throughout both law enforcement and gaming industry communities as an example of how FBI training could be applied to private sector security challenges. His successful defense of the Golden Palace became a case study for how organized crime investigations could be conducted by former federal agents working in civilian positions. But the most significant recognition came from the FBI itself, which invited Vincent to develop training programs for casino security personnel on recognizing and responding to organized crime infiltration. His expertise bridged the gap between federal law enforcement and private security in ways that strengthened both. Vincent remained as security director at the Golden Palace, but his role had evolved beyond traditional casino security. He became a consultant for the gaming industry on organized crime threats, helping other casinos develop security protocols that could detect and prevent criminal takeovers before they could succeed. During quiet nights when the casino operated peacefully and patrons gambled without knowing how close they'd come to becoming victims of organized crime, Vincent still monitored the gaming floor with the same vigilance he'd brought to FBI operations. But now he understood something that had taken him years to learn. Protecting people from organized crime didn't require federal authority or undercover operations. Sometimes the most important law enforcement work happened in places where nobody expected to find a former FBI agent, places where criminal organizations were stopped before they could establish control, where communities remained free because someone with extraordinary training chose to use those skills to protect ordinary people from extraordinary threats. Vincent Romano had spent 8 years infiltrating organized crime as an FBI agent. Now he spent his time ensuring that honest businesses could operate without criminal interference, knowing that someone with the training and commitment to recognize and defeat organized crime was watching. And in the end, he realized both missions were exactly the same: protecting good people from those who would exploit them, ensuring that criminal organizations couldn't corrupt the institutions that honest people depended on.